Hello and welcome to the coding walkthrough video for Fortitude 1.0, probably the largest content update for the game so far. It also represents us coming out of the prototype stage and into the full game development stage. I suppose an argument could be made that we've kind of been in the full game development stage for a little while now really, but this is the kind of official moving out from testing mechanics and things like that and into the more getting this game done kind of stage of development. So to kind of signify the big event, we've added the first of the game's narrative into Fortitude. So what I'm going to do is walk you through all the things that have been added in the game this update, and as usual then go through the code and a couple of the reasons behind the decisions we made, things like that. So quite a lot of stuff has been added in this update, and a lot of it's quite small, like quality of life stuff, although this isn't a quality of life update. So the best way I can demonstrate that is just to hit play and we'll go from there. So the first thing you might notice is that the little player now has a fuel gauge of his own. I've just realised I need to be in maximize so you can get a full screen experience. Yeah, so as you can see, the player now has his own little fuel gauge that represents the astronaut suit fuel. I'm just going to
Autopilot engaged.
autopilot the ship so it doesn't fly away. But yeah, so we're slowly trying to phase out this UI in the top left. So this is a nice little fuel gauge to show how much fuel the player's got. And yeah, so we're going to head over to the ship and get in. And we're going to head over to this nearby planet, El which was already in the game if you didn't already know. And let's just start heading that way. And as you might notice, we have now got prediction lines for the planet, so you can see where El has been and where it's going to be. These aren't real prediction lines, because the planets move in an orbital circle. These are literally just Photoshop created circular lines that go around the planet, but they do accurately predict the orbital pathway of the planet, so it works just great. All the same, and let's just speed up time a bit so we can head towards the world. So yeah, the big thing in this update is the Rogue Planet event, which is the overall kind of story event that goes on while you play Fortitude. Let's just get into this planet here.
Entering upper atmosphere and compensating for orbital rotation. Alert. Navigational systems offline.
So as you can see, a number of changes have been made. Let me just pause the game. First, the ship now speaks to tell you that you're in the atmosphere. Second, the distance variable has moved from up there to here to show you how far away you are from the ground. That has now actually been fixed. It was semi-functional for quite a while, but didn't work quite properly, whereas now works accurately. And also, we've added a few environmental hazards to the atmosphere of Alcaloda, and soon the atmospheres of all the planets that you can land on, in order to make landing a bit more interesting. Now, these are all kind of beta-y features. They're mainly there for proof of concept right now. We're just testing them out, so they're not 100% refined. And there is also quite a very, very early version of a parallax background system that I'm going to show you in a minute. It doesn't look amazing, so just bear that in mind when you see it, but I will go through the purpose it serves. So we're heading down into the planet here. We're 800 meters from the ground, going through placeholder cloud assets, and this is the main cloud layer. And as you'll notice, as we go through, two things happen. One, this background appears. Obviously it won't be that dramatic a change in the full game, but yeah, the background appears, and it won't be this picture as well, because I just grabbed it from Google. Yeah, there it is. That little dot there is the rogue planet. Over the course of the game, that planet will it will always be in the background whenever you're in the atmosphere of a planet, and only when you're in the atmosphere of a planet, because obviously you can't see things in like, it won't be in the background when you're in space. You have to go into the planet in order to see it. But over the course of the game, it will get bigger and bigger, and after exactly an hour of in-game time has passed, and depending on how you use the timescale, that might be a very long time or a very short time. After an hour has passed and the rogue planet is massive in the sky, the actual rogue planet will then sweep through the system and destroy everything. And if you haven't completed the game in that time and escaped, quotation marks, then it will kill you too, and it will be game over. So it's basically a bit of a timer event. This was an idea that was suggested to us by Adam a couple of weeks ago, and we've kind of improved upon it. It's a very good idea because it constantly keeps up tension in the game. So you've got to kind of complete the game within a certain time frame, even though you don't know exactly what the time frame is because you've only got the planet as guidance. But yeah, it keeps tensions high and kind of keeps a bit of a frantic nature to the game, and obviously hones quite dramatically in on our fear of the unknown theme because there's a planet coming towards you, but you don't know why or what it's going to do. So yeah, I'll just unpause the game and we'll go through a bit more. So yeah, it is there. You can see it a bit clearer now. And it does slowly get bigger and bigger as the game goes on. Distance is now 500 meters. Obviously, these things are not, you can't really see them very well because of the background. It's a placeholder background, so that won't matter later on. And as you might notice as well, this background's got a bit of a parallax system in the way that it slowly goes up as you fly downwards, and that's to give like the illusion of movement, i.e. you going down. And obviously we're scrolling to the bottom of the picture here, but as I said, it's a very, very early like parallax system. We're just kind of testing it right now. But yeah. Ooh, as you probably just saw there, we just got a gust of wind that's kind of pushing the ship. Oh my god, what happened there? Ooh, and we
Autopilot engaged.
Ooh, that was a bit of a rough landing. I wasn't paying attention. Too busy showing off the new features. But yeah, as you saw, the background is very, very buggy. It is literally a very early feature. It's not actually meant to be enabled for 1.0, but I enabled it for the purposes of showing you guys what it will be rather than what it is currently. So yeah, you can now obviously land on the planet, and as you might have noticed here, there is Josh's newly designed surface in the game, which is very, very cool looking. And as well, sorry, there's so much to unpack because I've spent the past week in Fortitude 1.0 editing a very small section of the game, so that whole experience we just went through is what's changed, including this bit as well. So as you might notice as well, movement on the planet is different. Now you can actually walk on the planet and it's relatively smooth, and you can also... Oh, I think the timer's up. Come on, there we go. You can also jump upwards and back down again, and that has a timer on it now, so you can only do bursts of jumping before it's got to recharge. So you can't jump, and then now you can, and it lasts up to about there before you fall back down and die. Yep, that's because I hit the ground too hard. Whoops. Let me just fly back. What you're going to do is you're going to pretend you didn't see that. But yeah, so there's a lot of features to unpack in this update, and a lot of them are quite buggy. But it's mainly meant to be a massive kind of content shift. And obviously, as per usual with all these massive updates, like the fuel system one I did in Prototype 1.8, it will be followed rather swiftly with a quality of life update, which will attempt to bug fix quite a lot of the issues. But yeah, now I'm going to show you the star of the show for this update, which is obviously the Rogue Planet event.
Upper atmosphere and compensating for orbital rotation.
And
alert, navigational systems offline.
And I'm also going to try and land rather poorly, I should think. 200 meters. Oh, I'm never going to do this. Oh, lost a lot of bits. Yeah, it is rather tough to land. You've really got to be paying attention, which I'm obviously not doing so well in at the moment. But we'll land here. And what I will do is boost up the timescale a bunch so that you can see the Rogue Planet in action. Yeah, I thought as much. It's a little bit buggy. Where is it? Ah, here it is. Sorry, I just noticed that it's a bit, yeah, there you go. No, that's not quite done it. Do apologise. There you go, that should do it. Oh my god. But yeah, so as you can see in the top left hand corner, this time float is going up. Now this won't be here in the full game, that's just to tell me how long you've got left until the rogue planet's going, so I can kind of debug and play and stuff. So we've got half an hour now until the planet gets here, and as you can see it gets bigger and bigger and closer, so you can kind of use it as a bit of a gauge whenever you're inside the atmosphere of a planet, in order to see how much time you've got left. 45 minutes now. We are 15 minutes in real time, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's very, very close. 55 minutes, and then eventually, when you hit exactly an hour into the game,
Alert. Gravitational anomaly detected. System destruction imminent. Alert. Gravitational anomaly detected.
let's just get rid of you. Shh, everything's fine.
System destruction imminent. Alert. Gravitational anomaly detected. System destruction imminent. Alert. Gravitational anomaly detected.
I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry about the background thing. We've really got a it's a very, very buggy mechanic, that background. Damn, it's kind of ruined the entire thing I was trying to show off there. Just bear in mind that's not, it literally is very, very early, that background thing. But anyway, that is what happens an hour into the game. That planet sweeps in and destroys Alcaloda and kicks that moon out of the way. It will do quite a lot more in the way of destruction in the full thing. This is just demonstration of what it's going to do, really. A little trial, really. But yeah, the idea is that it's going to wipe out the entire system when it comes in, and it'll be really dramatic and explosive like that. But yeah, obviously all these mechanics are a bit rough right now, but they do work as demonstration. So yeah, what I'll do now is I'll go through all the code, and we'll talk about how each of them worked. So obviously, let's start with the Rogue Planet event, the star of the show. It's got two scripts. This one is attached to the player, and this one basically deals with the zooming in of the planet in the atmosphere. So it takes the sprite renderers of each of the different elements of the planet and disables them on startup because you only want them to be visible while you're in the planet. And sets a boolean, sets that to false because obviously you don't start in a planet. And disables these two game objects, which will become relevant in just a minute. And then we've got a little thing down here that basically goes, if you collide with something tagged with upper atmosphere, which is, if you hadn't already guessed, where is it? Let's go down to here. The thing tagged with upper atmosphere is this cloud system. Oops, here. Basically, when you go through that cloud system, it enables the is already in planet boolean, and that's to do with the background. That basically just positions the background so that it appears once you go through the planet. Obviously, that'll be a lot smoother in the full game. And if that boolean is true, then enable the sprite renderers of the planets. Otherwise, disable them. And otherwise, because if you collide with something tagged with lower atmosphere, which is this bit here, basically if you're going upwards and out of the atmosphere, then it will disable the planet in the background, but if you're going into the atmosphere, it'll enable it. That's pretty much what that does. And then all the time, this bit happens regardless of whether you're in the atmosphere or not. It's increasing the scale of the planet sprite. Yep, as you can see here, it's transforming the local scale of it, basically making it bigger and bigger, even if you're not in the atmosphere. So you might fly off and go and do an adventure in space, and when you were there, the planet was quite small, and then you'll return to the planet and suddenly it's a hell of a lot bigger. than it was before in the background. And yeah, I just achieved this via a simple lerp that lerps a scale up times a certain transform speed and times timed at delta time, really. It's pretty simple stuff. And then what we've also got here is a timer, which is just a simple float that adds time and delta time to it and checks it every so often. And here we've got a little function that goes, if the rogue timer is greater than 3545 f, which is about 50 odd seconds before an hour into the game, then set the rogue planet to true. So what that does is it releases the rogue planet, the real rogue planet, not the sprite in the background. And then at exactly, well, more or less exactly an hour in, it switches the timescale and then starts playing the gravitational anomaly detected voice. And then at exactly an hour into the game, it switches the it begins boolean to true, which is, and I don't need to find the script for this bit, which I thought I had up, but I guess I didn't. And if that boolean is true, then where is it? These scripts get bigger and bigger. It's difficult to find things. Yeah, here we go. So if that boolean is true, then it changes the orthographic size to the map size, so it zooms out into the map, and then targets the rogue planet as the source of the camera's attention, so it basically views the planet rather than the player. And then changes the transformed opposition of it to follow the camera around, and obviously switches the timescale down. And the rogue planet itself is in here, and it's got the orbit system script attached to it, which we added ages ago, with an initial speed of 150, or minus 150 actually, and a target of Alcaloda. So basically at about 50 odd seconds before the it begins boolean is true, the planet gets released up here and starts making its way down here, so that when the camera switches at exactly an hour in, it's already got momentum, it's already moving to Alcaloda, which is here at that time, because the planets move around. And yeah, that's pretty much it with that particular one. And then we've got a short script here that's attached to the rogue planet itself, which basically goes, if it collides with Alcaloda, then play the destruction sound that you heard earlier. Disable the orbit system script so that it doesn't just push past, so it actually gets impacted and slows down velocity and stuff. Disables the Alcaloda body and enables the testing body. What that basically means is, as you saw in the explosion, when the planet hits Alcaloda, it turned white and split into pieces. In the full game, because we haven't designed that bit yet, in the full game it will obviously just split the planet into a bunch of like cracked asteroid components. But we don't have those yet, so it's just placeholder like white pizza slice elements at the moment. But yeah, so that's what the testing world bit means there. Basically disables the planet and enables this bit so that it looks like the planet's split up. And yeah, that's that bit. And then we've also got a pretty simple script here that I nabbed from online, which basically, I'm going to have to show you this bit actually, because I forgot to go through it a second ago.
Autopilot engaged.
It's actually a pretty cool mechanic,
Autopilot disengaged.
which, let's speed up time and go through. Come on. Slow that down.
Entering upper atmosphere and compensating for orbital rotation. Alert. Navigational systems offline.
Then we head down into the world, and this is the bit I wanted to show you. Let's just disable the background because I can't see anything while it's enabled. But as you can see here, we're zooming in and out, but the planet remains the same size. Zooming in and out, planet's the same size. Because when I was designing that mechanic, I was thinking, if you zoomed the camera in and out, because normally if you just parent an object to another object, if you zoom in and out, it gets bigger and smaller. But I was like, it's a planet, and it's way off in the distance. It's not going to get bigger and smaller if I just zoom in on a tiny spaceship. It will stay the same size. So in order to achieve that, I grabbed a simple script from online, which basically takes the orthographic size of the camera and the local scale of the object it's attached to, which in this case is the rogue planet, and basically it transforms the scale to the size of the camera, but it basically just keeps the size of the planet relative to the size of the camera, so that no matter how much you zoom in or out, the rogue planet will always be the same relative size. It's pretty cool stuff. And then this bit here is just the code I added to change up the movement system while you're on foot on the surface of a world, because it used to be momentum based, so you would kind of just walk around and you'd press A a little bit and you'd shoot off in like left or whatever. And that as a mechanic works really well in space, but not so well on the planet. It's kind of annoying. Yeah, that's the add relative force one. So to combat that, I basically changed the movement from an add relative force to a transform.translate. And this happens whenever you're in planet, whenever the in-planet boolean from orbit transfer is true. And it basically transform.translates when you press the A key left times planet side, which is a float and a video game. And also obviously changes the planet, so it changes the sprite rather, so you're facing left. And here you've got transform translate. You go right, basically you move right when you press D, and you move left when you press A. You know, it's the standard controls, but it uses transform.translate rather than add force, because it's smoother walking around, and it also looks more like you're walking rather than sliding, which is what add force did. And yep, I think that is it. Oh, the cooldown thing, yep. So basically when you press up, where is W? I hate this. Yeah, here we go. Sorry, these scripts get so long now I can start to lose where I am. But yeah, basically whenever you press the W key, it starts this timer. And if the timer is less than 3 seconds, then it goes upwards via planet up, which is another float set. Otherwise, if the timer is greater than 3 seconds, then is cooldown is true. And what this basically does is it lets you boost upwards for 3 seconds before then putting you on a cooldown before letting you jump again. So it's basically like a cooldown jump mechanic, like most video games have. It's to stop you flying off into the atmosphere and escaping. And yeah. And it's got a cooldown of 7 seconds between 3 and 10. If the timer is greater than 10, then its cooldown is false. So yeah, it just gives you a little cooldown to make sure that you're not flying off into the stratosphere whenever you jump. We also added a display fuel function for the astronaut. So if we just quickly show you here, no, I want that one. Whenever you're in charge of the astronaut, there's a fuel gauge for him, and whenever you're in charge of the players, obviously a fuel gauge for him. You can. Not only is it a pretty handy visual tool for telling you who you're currently in control of, but you can also now see the astronaut's suit fuel gauge. And in order to do this was the display fuel gauge thing from the last update, but we've literally just copied and pasted that for the foot fuel one. Instead, this time only enabling it when you're not in. When you're not in the ship and when you're not remote controlling. Obviously taking different segments, which are dragged over to the fuel gauge thing here. Where is it? Fuel system. Yeah. All these little segments which are attached to the little player. Yeah. Each of these little bits is one of these coloured segments of the fuel bar. I won't go through how the code works for the fuel gauge now, because you've probably already saw that if you've watched the Prototype 0.8 video. It's literally just a copy and paste of the rocket fuel gauge's code with just a little couple of tweaks in there. Sorry, I've just realised this video is quite lengthy, 25 minutes and counting. Let me just rush through the rest of the code here. What else have we got to do? Prediction lines, yep, done that. On for planetary movement. Ah, yes, atmospheric winds. Those winds that you saw earlier when you're flying through the atmosphere of El Caloda are over here. And they are basically just a bunch of clouds that sweep in and out of the planet, so that whenever if you're flying downwards, then you get caught in a gust of wind, they basically just move you around from side to side. It's to make landing, a bit more difficult because you've got to compensate for wind, as well as kind of figure out how you're going to land. So in order to achieve this effect, we added a bunch of these placeholder clouds. Well, I added a bunch of these placeholder clouds. Where are they? Yeah, there they are. There we go, a bunch of clouds with rigid bodies and box colliders on them, or they're on trigger ones. And the first thing we've got going on here is a transformed opposition that slowly moves them to the left and right depending on their move speed, which is set here, and each one's obviously a little different, -2 and 2 as you can see there. So you can move them in different directions. And then if they tag with something, if they collide with something tagged with escape El Colloder, which is these two bars here, then they get teleported to the other side. So basically they move over to there and then teleport around, and then move over to there and teleport around. They don't go anywhere, basically they just keep respawning and flying over the atmosphere. And yeah, so that's done through there. And then if they collide with the player, then they add a torque, which is minus this float that we've done up here, so depending on the cloud it'll be different. And they also move them, so that basically it rotates the player a little bit and also pushes them around slightly, so they've got to kind of compensate for moving around and landing and things like that. And then here, this is the background parallax system, the very, very buggy one that I showed you earlier. And it basically goes, if the player is in the ship, then what is this bit? Oh yeah, so this takes the current velocity of the player, whether they're in the ship or on foot. Oops. And that gets determined here. And then it translates the background, because the script is attached to the background, in the opposite direction of the ship's velocity, because it's a vector 3, times the speed, times time of delta time. Speed is a little float that we set up here. And what that basically does is it moves the background in the opposite direction of the player's current trajectory. So if he's going left, the background will move right to give the kind of visual impression that you're moving. It's parallax. It's, standard stuff really, but it gives you the kind of visual impression of movement, because one of the biggest complaints we've had, well not complaints, but like criticisms we've had of playtesting the games, that you can't tell when you're moving. This is a bit of an attempt to counter that with some moving backgrounds. They'll obviously be further implemented the more we refine it. What else have we got to go through? Oh yeah, the speed, the GUI. A little bit of edited code here. Basically, whenever you're in the planet, it now puts the distance in the middle of the screen, which is done by these coordinates here, X, Y, Z, rather than in the top left, which it was earlier. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. I think we've been through everything. Oh no, there's one more thing actually. We have obviously a list of 4 worlds that the player can land on. There used to be the Rogue Planet's moon, El Colloder, Esteban's moon, and Riker's moon. That has since changed because we wanted to change the narrative a bit, and you can read up on why we did that, things like that, in our weekly walkthrough this week, week 29. But basically, now the 4 planetary areas you can land on are the moon of Riker, yeah, that's Riker, El Colloder, the moon of Esteban, and Diadem. You can now land on Diadem. So what we did, I did, was quickly swap out the code for landing on the Rogue moon for Diadem. So I just changed out the booleans and switched up the surfaces a bit, so that you can now land on this world via this placeholder surface thing here, because the designs for it are still in progress. And yeah, I mean, this is just the standard landing code that we've been through before. It's just been switched up to represent Diadem rather than Rogue Planet's moon now. But yeah, that is pretty much it. Sorry for the length of the video, obviously, because it's quite a large update. There's been quite a lot to go through. But I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you for Fortitude 1.1.